In the 2016 census, it was revealed that out of a total population of just over 83,000, 42,000 were women, so that's over half. But despite this, and the fact that, as we've heard, some women in the Isle of Man were given the vote back in 1881, 37 years ahead of the celebrated centenary in the UK, just like to get that in as many times as possible, comparatively few women have stood for election and served in the House of Keys or Legislative Council over the past 130 years. And this is the subject for the latest debate organised by the Positive Action Group. And to tell us more, we have a PAG member with us this afternoon. Joanne Posey, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Let's just take a moment to remind ourselves about the Positive Action Group and what they stand for. What is it all about?
We are an apolitical organisation. So there's no agenda, but the main driver is to promote engagement in politics in the population, to get people thinking about politics, the effect that it might have on their lives, to become more aware of what's going on in Tynwald, and hopefully by that pushing more people to actually turn up on voting days.
And what drew you to PAG in the first place?
I attended a couple of their public meetings. The most recent one was to do with our approach to the health services locally. And then I sent a message after that one to say, great meeting, really enjoyed. However, where were the women? Because they had 4 blokes on the panel being presented by another bloke. And given the subject, there are a lot of women that they could have approached. Anyway, so he just kind of held his hands up and was very open to the discussion, but then put me on the spot by saying, well, just so happens we have a space on the committee. So basically put your money where your mouth is. So that's it. That was quite recently.
And how have you been received then as the only woman on the committee?
Well, I'm not actually. I'm not the only woman on the committee. There are 3 others. But they've been incredibly open. They've been really, really open. At the first committee meeting, I suggested a discussion on women in politics or women at senior levels in government, and here we are.
It's an interesting time to do this, isn't it? Because I think some people would say, actually, we're doing much better now. Look at the latest round of the Legislative Council elections and how many women were elected there. The message is getting out. We don't need to worry anymore.
Yeah, but I think we won't need to worry about the message anymore when we're not talking about it anymore. The fact that, we still have a minority of women on the Legislative Council, but, as you say, there was an awful lot of press around the time about the fact that 5 women were voted on.
I think now there is a majority of women in LegCo compared to any other time.
Yes, certainly compared to history. But we still have 5 out of 24 in Tynwald, in the House of Keys. So we've still got a long way to go. So we're interested to hear some of the stories, both from past and present members of Tynwald on Monday evening, as to why they think there is this disparity, what their experience has been.
The interesting thing about it is that, right now, as we're saying now, we do have more women, which is fantastic. And yet we're at a time where society really struggles because of social media. And it has been said in the past that women in particular really do struggle with the nature of social media. And of course, as soon as you put yourself up there and out there, you are potentially going to get slammed quite a lot. And so how on earth do you combat that? Because that must be discouraging a lot of women from coming forward.
I would say so, yeah. And in that regard, it's not necessarily even just women. I think, it's discouraging a wider diversity of candidates just generally, for people thinking, well, if I'm just going to get trolled non-stop, why would I bother? So I don't know what the answer is to that, but certainly it'll be something that we'll discuss and find out what the experiences are when we meet with our panel on Monday evening.
So just tell us how Monday is going to work then, because you're talking about this panel. Who are they?
We have Hazel Hannon. We have Daphne Kane and Kate Beecroft and Anne Corlett from the current cohort within the Keys. And we also have Jane Poole Wilson and Kerry Sharp from LegCo. So we will have an open panel discussion, which will be putting various questions to them, as I said, based on their experiences, why they think more women don't stand, what the deterrents might be, what their experiences have been, both from the electorate and from their now fellow members, what their highlights have been, what's disappointed them, and how they think things could be improved going forward. We'll then move on to what we're thinking is, rather than having it the usual questions from the floor where everybody sat and theatre style, we'd put it more round table, so people will be literally sitting in round tables, and then we'll have one member of the panel sat with each table going round, just so to sort of facilitate a more open discussion.
And this is open to anybody. You don't have to be a PAG member to go along to this.
Exactly, yeah. Anyone can show up at 7:30 at the Manx Legion on Monday evening.
And I'm just anticipating there will be some really interesting points raised. And I'm just looking at you as an example, Joanne, because clearly you are politically minded, you're very articulate. Have you ever thought about standing yourself?
I hear that more and more since I became more openly political, which is probably only in the last couple of years, in truth. But I don't know if I've got the right temperament.
Why?
From having sat in the Keys and watched, I think you've got to be quite cool-headed. And I don't know if that's me. And I don't know if I'm thick-skinned enough.
See, that's interesting. So that maybe is some of the questions that lots of women who've maybe thought, I have an interest in politics, but I'm not sure whether I'm the right sort of person. Do you think men ask themselves those sort of questions?
Well, that could be, could be quite controversial, really, couldn't it? I think we do have the perception that men are less likely to question their abilities or whether they're suitable. But obviously we have to hashtag everything, don't we? Not all men. But I'd probably be inclined to say fewer men would question their abilities as to, So again, maybe that's questions I need to take that back for my own reflection.
It does all link in, doesn't it? Because I know it's something we've talked about with regards to the business world as well, and the fact that there aren't as many women sort of getting up to the top of positions in corporate areas. And partly it is said that's because we are almost too honest about our abilities, and that we will sort of reflect on who we are, what we're capable of, what our personalities are, and stand back from something, whereas men are apparently more inclined to just go for it and see how they work out when they get in there, even if they may not have those sort of tick boxes. So it's an interesting sort of parallel.
There are people, though, who say that actually we do need to stop talking about this, because all that happens is you end up pointing towards positive discrimination, which some people see as a bad thing. And we talk about quotas, which some people, again, think you don't want somebody in a job just because of their gender. You want them in the job because they're the right person. How do you make sure that happens and yet you get a decent reflection of our population?
Well, I would be in favour of positive discrimination for a number of reasons. One, I think, albeit informally, I think men have benefited from positive discrimination for centuries. Like attracts like. People promote people that look like them and that make the same noises that they do. And by the same token, as individuals, we see ourselves in certain situations because we are reflected back in that, in that management role. Well, I can see myself in that role because it's look at all those women. So I'm a woman. I would fit in. Whereas if we see, we look at a dynamic that is entirely male, then there's that, albeit subconscious, questioning. Do I fit in? Is that the place for me? Maybe I won't go for that promotion.
How do you think positive discrimination could work at a practical level then?
As far as Tim was concerned, it's difficult. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that, because obviously we don't have a party system. So it's not the case that you would insist upon the Manx Labour Party putting up equal number of candidates or whatever. So given that everyone is, or rather, most members are, at least in theory, independents. I don't know how that would work. To be frank.
Do you feel that you are missing out because there aren't more women in Keys?
I think most of, there's an awful lot of evidence that suggests that more diverse organisations work better. So, and that's not necessarily just gender diversity. It's diversity of background, of experience. So I think we are undoubtedly missing out on a lot of talented people. And as I say, that this, the evidence suggests that we're maybe, we're not getting the best of the best currently standing. We're getting a lot of like attracts like, and a lot of people that, well, I've got a friend that does it, so, and he's told me to talk to the right person, and so yeah, I think we are missing out, and we could be better run if we had more diversity.
I guess the difficulty here is always going to be we have, really quite a small pool to choose from. We've got a very small population, really, to form a government from. And so presumably we're always going to struggle in getting, a really diverse mix of people in there. From 80,000 something bods, it's going to be difficult, isn't it?
It is. But, if we could start with reflecting at least, the gender split. It's a start, and that we're nowhere near that now. When it's then, that's got to have that's got to be meaningful if we can get there. And I think we do generally have some very talented people in there. I was at a presentation that Jane Poole Wilson gave a month or so ago, and she is, I'm a big fan. She's incredibly articulate. She's plainly massively intelligent. She's incredibly rational. She's just very impressive as an individual, and the fact that she has chosen to take up a role in LegCo, I think it's hugely positive.
So, what do you feel then from the bits you've sort of learned over the time you've been working on this? What do you think are some of the skills that we need to be looking for in women that may well really fit in this sort of environment?
The ability to work with a diversity of people, open-mindedness, those key communication skills, empathy, the ability to compromise. I mean, these aren't, plainly these aren't female-specific gifts, but I think if enough women sat back and thought, oh, well, actually, I can be empathetic, I'm a good communicator, then perhaps they'd see themselves more naturally in those roles. I think hopefully the days of the so-called alpha males butting heads, are on the way out, I hope.
Joanne, it sounds like it's going to be a fascinating discussion on Monday. Just remind people of when and where this is happening.
It's 7:30 at the Manx Legion in Douglas, and say open to absolutely everybody.
We've had a text from Paul saying, can men go?
Absolutely.